It's almost 2 weeks since the Premier League's longest ever season ended, but the club executives are still busy. They held the annual general meeting of the Premier League today, and there were some big decisions to take. One of them was over substitutions, and the experiment with 5 subs is over. That temporary measure has been thrown out. The clubs have agreed to revert to just 3 subs being allowed in games. Of course, it was IFAB, football's lawmakers, that did allow the temporary change to the laws and the 2 additional substitutes to cope with the increased workload on players in the congested fixture programmes that had to be implemented as competitions resumed after the shutdowns caused by the pandemic. Now, IFAB has been allowing leagues to continue with 5 subs into next season because of the problems caused to the schedules over the pandemic, but the Premier League's big clubs have been outvoted. It seemed to give an advantage to those leading clubs to be able to bring on more subs because their squads have got greater strength of quality. So we saw in one game, the Manchester United manager Ole Gunnar Solskjaer brought 5 subs on at once. And that's something the clubs lower down the table don't want to see any longer, because anything that sort of puts them even more at a competitive disadvantage against those leading clubs is something they don't want to see. So 5 subs are out, 3 subs are back. Although in some leagues around the world, you might still see 5 substitutions being used as long as those clubs do agree to adopting the principle. Well, what else was discussed today by the Premier League clubs? VAR, of course. Last season, controversially, was the debut of VAR in the Premier League. So many moments disputed, particularly over how often referees go over to look at the pitch side monitors. Well, that should be happening a lot more next season because the Premier League has adopted the FIFA protocols, and FIFA is now overseeing VAR worldwide. And in and amongst them, it's saying that referees should be going over to the referee review area far more often to check on those big decisions, to look at penalties, red cards, and goal decisions. Because I think ultimately fans want to see the referee is taking the final decision. Too often in Premier League games last season, we saw the referee often static on the pitch with his finger to his ear, waiting to be told by Stockley Park what they were viewing on the replays, rather than him going over himself to the monitor that was there to check them himself. So it was his own judgment call that was ultimately making those big decisions. What else was discussed on VAR? Well, encroachment in the penalty area. Any encroachment now will be penalised. Also, any movement on the goal line for penalties will also be penalised. So for encroachment and movement off the goal line for goalkeepers, we're going to see penalties being retaken. The other aspect of VAR that gets fans very heated up and managers is offsides. But the protocols are clear. There are not marginal offsides. You're either offside or you're not. So that's something that looks like continuing as a moment of controversy next season when we're seeing those toenail offsides, those armpit offsides. That so infuriated fans and managers and players throughout last season. Of course, the fact the season did finally end was a success because, of course, at one point during that 100-day shutdown, it very much looked like that it might not get back underway again. But Premier League is now over. Clubs have finally held the last of many meetings that they've had to in recent months, and things are now clear as they move into the summer. The new season is due to begin around September the 12th, but the uncertainty that lingers is over whether fans will be allowed back into stadiums or not. Those pilot schemes have been on hold in other sports with bringing some fans back in over the concerns about the spike in coronavirus cases. And it's not clear yet when football will get its own test events in England. Of course, the government had originally planned for fans to start to come back into stadiums in October. Even then, perhaps only 25% capacity we'd be looking at. But it's the virus in control and it's the pandemic that continues to provide uncertainty across the league as fans are uncertain when they'll go back into stadiums and clubs are unclear when they'll be able to get that match day revenue back into from fans into the clubs. And we've already seen Arsenal had to make 55 staff members redundant, such as the financial devastation caused by the pandemic.